Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where we talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. This episode is brought to you by 40 Counting. 40 Counting is built to help small to mid-sized businesses understand their numbers, from bookkeeping, financial analysis, even your taxes. If you want to learn more information, please go to 40accounting.com. Very excited to have with us today Amanda Patterson. She's the founder and CEO of Rocket Fuel Labs, a marketing and growth consultancy. They help startup and scaling companies to help really accelerate their growth through a strategic mindset, but actually really good marketing. I'm excited for her to talk about what she does today. She has a proven track record. She's been a part of Mind Body, helping to grow them as an organization and getting through a successful IPO. And she's also, been honored as a Pacific Coast Business Times top 40 under 40, and also has been a part of Rocket Fuel Labs as one of the best workplaces that was voted for in 2024. Amanda, welcome to the Measure Success podcast.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So for those who aren't familiar with you and your business, share a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, so Rocket Fuel Labs is a CMO as a service, we call it. It's like a fractional CMO studio focused on performance marketing for early stage companies, high growth companies, companies that want to hit their numbers. That's really where we focus.
So I'm kind of curious on that. Are you working with VC and PE backed businesses typically, or are they also just general startup? I'm kind of curious on that side.
Yeah, great question. So it's kind of a mix. We definitely have quite a few VC backed companies, and in some cases seed stage. So we have several success stories where we've helped seed stage companies actually get to the point where they can raise a Series A. Raising a Series A has been challenging in the last few years, as you probably know. So we've, worked with companies to help them kind of get to that point and start seeing the traction that they need to be able to show investors to get that round.
So this is, what one of the most important things, right, of any business is to be able to get prospects, get potential people out in the world to find your product or service to buy it. And I'm assuming you're not doing the same thing for each client. What is your process that you do to help a company understand how they need to go into the market to help accelerate sales?
Great question. So we have kind of four areas that we evaluate when we first start talking to a company, and we call them our 4 Ps: precision, process, positioning, and performance. And what we always say is that if you're firing on all four of those cylinders, you're going to go fast. So precision is about who they're targeting. The more segmented and specific they can be about who they're going after, the more successful they're going to be, because they're not going to be wasting a lot of money getting their campaign in front of the wrong people. So that's super important. The process piece is ensuring that the tracking, the measurement, the reporting is in place so that they know before they launch a campaign exactly what they're trying to learn. And if something doesn't work, they know why it didn't work. Again, you can waste a lot of money trying to figure out why something didn't work instead of just setting it up front to test that. And then the positioning is really about what you're saying once you do get in front of the right people. So it needs to be compelling. It needs to be differentiating. It needs to be true. And some of our clients need help, like especially if you have a product that has a lot of features, like, it's an all-in-one platform or something like that. Sometimes that can be really the most challenging in terms of positioning. Like, how do you differentiate? Which features do you focus on? So we help them with that. And then performance, of course. And performance is the actual tactical execution of the campaigns. So we really kind of focus on those areas. And the last thing I'll say is that we also want to understand their goals, because as I mentioned, we're here to help them hit their numbers. So we want to know, what's your revenue goal? And also, what are the unit economics that matter to you? Are you driving towards a magic number? Are you driving towards LTV to CAC? How much is a client worth to you? How much are you willing to spend to bring that client in the door? And having those conversations really early on allows us to make the recommendations that are going to help them get there.
Okay, that was a really good explanation. I love the 4 Ps that you mentioned there. Good job for your own branding and positioning, by the way. That you're following what you say to others to help do. You threw out a couple acronyms there that I understood, but I'm not sure everybody in the audience might understood. Talk about LTV, CAC. What are those metrics and why are they?
LTV to CAC is an efficiency metric that is a signal to investors that you can scale efficiently. And continue to be, if you're not profitable today, that you're at least moving in the direction of profitability, which has become really, really important these days. So LTV stands for lifetime value of a client, and CAC is the cost of acquiring the client or cost of acquiring the customer. And really that ratio just seems to be positive. And most investors are kind of looking for anything over 3. I usually 7 is my lucky number. So I try to get our clients closer to 7. But yeah, it's an efficiency metric at the end of the day. You want to generate at a low cost.
Right, for sure. I'm curious, when you go into a client for the first time, how often do they know those two numbers?
I would say 30% of the time, not very often. And the reason it's only 30 is, well, 2 things. One, I'm often talking to clients who are just throwing spaghetti against the wall. So they get to their first million, sometimes even their first 2 million, just through brute force and a lot of sweat. So cold calling, referrals, tapping into their network. Maybe they have some partnerships, but there's really no predictable pipeline, let's say. And so they get to a certain point and then they kind of plateau. So they don't really know what their cost of acquisition is. They haven't really been measuring it. They're not really counting how many hours the CEO or founder is personally spending trying to get that business. And then the other piece, LTV, that actually is pretty hard to track when you're depending on how early you are. Like if you've only been around for a few years, you might have maybe none of your clients, hopefully none of your clients have left. So you don't really know like what your average lifetime is going to be. But in the absence of that information, we have a conversation with the client and try to make some assumptions and say, okay, well, let's try to get you positive on our just a year. If you don't know what the LTV is, we can still try to have a positive annual ROI and, agree on a number they're comfortable with. So we'll work with them if they, don't quite know or can't quite figure out. But the important thing is like, number 1, not to be totally guessing. Number 2, to be setting a goal for marketing that everybody agrees on up front so that we can know 6 months later if it was successful or not and see that needle moving.
Okay, that led to my next question. I loved how you mentioned, okay, 6 months later, if somebody contacts you for the first time and they're like, okay, we're gonna hire you and we're looking for an ROI, right? How quickly can you assess, go through your 4 Ps and actually go through the process of actually doing the marketing, right? To start actually creating ROI, right, for the company?
Yeah. Well, I hate to say it depends because it just sounds like, such a
What's
cop
true?
out, but it does because some of our clients are enterprise B2B and they have 6-month sales cycles. So they're really not going to see ROI until they close those deals. And the amount of time it takes to close them can be months. And then with other clients, they start seeing ROI within 3 months. So it really depends on how quickly they close deals, what the conversion rates are. But we do that analysis with them up front because it's important to kind of set that expectation and make sure they understand, marketing is not an expense, it's an investment. I think the businesses that realize that and look at it that way are going to be more successful. Yes, you have to have a plan. And yes, you also have to have a timestamp to say, like, for example, if a client has a long sales cycle, we might agree that the goal is booked meetings that are high quality and qualified decision makers. And if we get a certain number of booked meetings and put a certain amount of revenue in their pipeline within a 3-month period, we're going to agree that it was successful. So we kind of, it does depend, but in terms of when they're actually going to see the return in terms of money in the bank, that's definitely dependent on their business model, their sales cycle, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay, good. I know. I appreciate you sharing it. And clearly, I'm curious when you're doing some of the efforts, and I know I recognize that closing a deal is different than bringing the lead to the salesperson, right? But do you find though with good marketing that you are able to accelerate the close process?
Yes. Actually, we have helped a number of clients with their sales enablement materials, including pitch decks, case studies, objection handling, like maybe a competitive analysis or a competitive comparison chart, ROI calculators. There's a number of materials that we've helped our clients create. And what's great about our methodology is that we make sure upfront that we're able to look at the whole funnel so that we can actually see if leads are falling through the cracks or dropping off, we're going to know where in the process they're dropping off. So if the opportunity to close rate is, 50%, that's really good. Like that's, above average. I typically see 30 to 50%. Uh, if it's below 30%, if you're looking at 20%, I'm going to ask questions about that and say, let me take a look at your demo. Let me take a look at your pitch deck. Let's see if we can help you with that. The same applies at the top of the funnel. If we're running a campaign and the lead to qualified lead rate is the conversion rate is too low, that tells me something is wrong with our audience targeting. We're not quite getting the right people. So every stage of the funnel should be tracked, and you should have we typically have benchmarks for the industry for what the conversion rate should be at each stage, and then we consult and make recommendations where we see a drop off.
Good, good. Okay, cool. That's exciting. So you do go further down the process, so to speak, to help understand, because of course that is ultimately helping you all out, right? To help get your ROI if things are being closed, behind that, going through the whole process and that cycle. So when you start this process with the client, what's some of their biggest objections? What do they fight you on, for lack of a better term, right? Even though you're the expert, and helping to provide marketing, where do they often, not always, but often get stuck on?
Do you mean objections to signing a contract with me?
No, no, after they've signed the contract. So they've signed a
Okay.
contract with you, they've moved forward with you, and then they're getting ready to implement new things, right? And I have often I'll see a CEO will be like, "No, we don't do things that way," or "We don't want to pitch it this way," or "We want to go a different path." What are those things, right? What are those type of things that, like, intuitively, or not even intuitively, just based on data, that you go down this path, you're going to have more success, but they have a different background or a different concept, or they've been doing something in the past 5 years that's been different. What are those type of things that they might butt heads with you?
It's interesting because of the way that I have marketed and branded our business. I don't get that a lot because most of the founders who come to me for help are like, I don't know what to do. I want your expertise. And so they're actually really take our advice most of the time. The only time I feel like there's some disagreement sometimes is if a founder really is completely convinced that they understand their customer inside and out. They know exactly what their customer wants and would like or wouldn't like. And oh, my customers are not on LinkedIn, or my customers wouldn't like that headline. And that's where where I like to challenge them and say, when was the last time you talked to your customers or did research or whatever? Customer insight, or I might ask, I often do call my clients' customers. Like I've been known to do that. If we're doing creative, I'll be like, you know what? I'm not sure which value proposition is going to work the best. Can I call your customers and ask them a few questions that will help me get to that information? So I'm very open about that. And I really want to talk to customers and hear what they have to say, hear the language that they use. But most of the time, in my experience, and this is at every single company I've worked at, there is some disconnect between what the founder thinks the customers want or how they feel or what they're going to like in reality. So as much as if I can convince a client to let me test something or let me talk to a customer, I consider that a win. But that's the only thing I sometimes disagree with my clients about. And it's not that I disagree with them that I think they're wrong. It's more that I'm just questioning whether or not they're right.
No, yeah, it's not uncommon, right, for somebody who's been in their business for a while to have a perception, because they've been doing it for, it's their baby, for lack of a better term, that they know exactly what people want. But it is surprising how often I've seen it, where the value proposition that they think they're providing is not at all what the customers are buying their product or service for, right?
It
It's just there's a
happens.
yeah, yeah, there's like a disconnect of, no, they're looking, let's say, it's a great example, like they're looking for the benefits of it. They're not necessarily looking for the thing itself. Like they might tout features and benefits,
Uh-huh.
right, of a product or service. And it's like, no, they want the outcome
Uh,
of the product or service, just as like these like little things, like, no, especially when I work with tech companies, in the past, I've been with them. It's like, oh, we want to talk about our XYZ dot, this is the seventh generation, da da da. I'm just kind of making the numbers up right now. And they get all
Yeah.
excited about it. It's like, unless you're selling to engineers, right? They might not care at all, right, about that. And I'm talking a little bit for some of my own history where I worked with an engineering firm and we were selling to education, and we had headsets and microphones, and we get all excited about our stuff. And when I first got there, everything was like this is the 720 series.
Mm.
And it's like, well, that means nothing to like a teacher,
Hmm.
right? Or to a student, what's a 720? Nobody cares, and so,
Yeah.
um, super interesting. Okay, other pieces behind. Well, let's go a little bit back into your history, if you don't mind. Since how did you get into this? What got you excited to go down this marketing path and get down to do ROI, et cetera, to helping out with clients? Like, how did you get into this type of business?
Well, I got into marketing as a writer. So I was an English major and I started when I was in college. Was kind of working my way through college, just doing copywriting for companies, writing their website copy, their ad copy. And that just turned into my first full time marketing gig right out of college. That was how I got into marketing. And then I got into demand gen when I started working because I started my career on the agency side, then moved over into tech. And it was at a tech company that I started focusing on lead generation. And it was really in the early days of kind of marketing automation. And I implemented Eloqua and I started creating nurture campaigns and running webinars and saying, okay, how do I generate a predictable pipeline of leads for the sales team? So yeah, it was just kind of a journey that started with creative and has now come full circle. And I'm now running an agency that really does both. We do creative and demand gen.
Literally, one of my first companies that I worked for was a company called Babcock Jenkins, and this is what they would do is they would remember the old mailers, like you do it like a physical mailer. It's like that's such
Hmm.
an antique thing to do, but they still exist. But it was the early days. We'd put a little code on it, like to give a
Hmm.
gift, and then that gift would turn into basically a website, a micro website, and that would be how we'd get the leads. And so
Yeah.
we had this truly, it was like kind of the early stages of true ROI marketing.
Yeah.
And we do creative to like through the product to help them, and then also to help filter their leads. And it is fascinating how things have accelerated. So it's interesting to hearing about you. It's like, hey, good news, English majors, there is jobs, right? So to speak. It's kind of like, you got their things.
I
So,
know.
and not being a teacher, if that makes sense. So you went down this path of English. I love it how you copywriting just filtered through and your career transformed. I have to have this question because I'd feel bad if I didn't ask the question. So much changes with AI, right? Today, ChatGPT, Perplexity, whatever tools that you're using. How much are you all using this information to accelerate and help support your clients' success?
Yeah. So there are a number of AI tools that we're implementing as an agency, and we're still like adding more. I just had an employee today Slack me with a new tool that she wants to start using. So my writers and designers and account managers use it. They're one of the most like useful tools is actually Gong. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Gong, but Gong is a note taker, so it records meetings, but it has a huge AI component where it summarizes every meeting and distributes the action items and the notes, and you can tag other team members. And it really helped the agency because prior to Gong, everybody was going to way too many meetings. And now people can just skip a meeting, get the Gong recording, go watch just part of it, the part that's relevant to them, and then do the work. So things like that, like I find AI is really useful for sure in terms of improving our efficiency, our ability to quickly iterate on ads and generate more ads and more copy for our clients to get results faster and to test more. Like the volume of actual content you can create and ads you can test, of course, is much higher now. So I think it's a net positive for sure.
So I'm sure this is no different for your inbox. It is for mine. It is on LinkedIn and whatever other platform you want to name. Because of AI, I get more content than ever before.
Mm.
And I could sense in most cases, like, well, I'll just do a small example and it's a fun one. I'm grateful, but I get more podcast requests today. And I know part of it's because I've been around for a while and this is my first podcast that we've done here. we get one application a day, 1 to 2 a day of being on the podcast. Well, AI has helped accelerate that, right? Because they're like, oh, I've listened to your podcast. And well, I could tell by the script, it's an AI generated piece. And
Oh,
much
yeah.
as we love our show, I don't expect every new person to listen to every podcast to see if one of their potential agents or look have actually listened to the show. I recognize that outright. And so, but the problem is, right, at its core, it's helped us, and I'm grateful for it. I get to meet people like yourself that we perhaps would have never connected. But the bad news, right, the bad part around this is it takes away trust from the content I'm getting, right? I have less trust as a quote unquote a buyer or consumer, of things when stuff's getting into my inbox. So how are you overcoming that? How are you helping? Because I think this is a real problem for marketers today, to sifting through, HubSpot scripts get blocked, Google blocks things, right? There's so many things are getting blocked. How are you overcoming that?
Okay, so I'm really glad you brought up copywriting and writing since I was an English major and I have strong opinions about this. Most lay people who are not, you know, professional writers can tell when they're reading something that AI wrote. And I have full-time writers who are super talented. Um, and we write, and there is a difference between copy that a human wrote and AI generated. And I think that the same is true of images and photos and TV commercials and all of it. Like people can tell. And so I think the most effective way to leverage AI for marketing is to augment your ability to kind of generate ideas and to brainstorm, to maybe help you if you have writer's block. Like it's really great to kind of unstick you if you're stuck. But the people that are depending totally on it and just saying, write a blog for me and then copying and pasting it onto their website, I don't think that that's the right approach. I don't think it's as effective. I think if you don't have real writers that are taking the input from ChatGPT and going, oh, that's a good idea, and using their skill and ability to decide what to include and what to leave out and maybe what to, grab and go, if you will. AI can help you write faster. It can help you brainstorm faster, but I don't think it's replacing writers yet because of what you just said, because every client I talk to, everybody I talk to is like, oh, I can totally tell that was AI generated as opposed to human, which is an opportunity for marketers to stand out. Because
Right.
like if you're a really strong writer and you can demonstrate add that humanity, at the end of the day, marketing is human connection. That's what it's about. It's about human psychology, human connection, and the better you are at connecting with people, the more effective your campaigns are going to be. You can't outsource that to a robot.
Thank you. I think that was very well said. I appreciate how, once again, you're like, hey, I'm in the bright, I'm this is my background, but yeah, we still have professional writers on staff, and our secret sauce is what you don't understand. In anybody in any industry, right, who know that, a difference between somebody who just figured something out versus somebody who's been in for doing 10, 15 years. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously AI is fantastic, but like there's those little things, and you'll laugh at this, like when it has the double hyphen, like in a line, it's like, folks, if you still have that in your copy, that's AI generated. It's like a cop out. Like that's nobody writes that way. Nobody puts two
Yeah.
dashes together, in a writing. We just don't do it. But people don't review, they don't think. And so it ends up looking, once again, not real. I've found in our own stuff as we've evolved, from me 100% writing everything to doing all sorts of different things, we've had to be really careful on our AI use, right? Because there was this period I went way overdid it. And sure enough, our people could tell, and even my wife was like, you didn't write that, didn't you? I was like, it's kind of like mumbling. But now we've learned how to, once again, augment it, use it appropriately. And I definitely have found the more human it is, the more it is about real human experiences, gains trust, right? At the end of the day, that human connection, what you just said, which is so critical in marketing, right? Of getting somebody to be trusting that they want to buy your goods or services, right? In exchange, right, for something else. So thank you for your expertise in that. Why did you decide to start your own business? What got you there? It's a big, bold step, right? To start something on your own. And obviously you've gotten to a point of some level of success, clearly, where you're growing and You've got 2024 employer of the year, or one of the top employers, I should say, in your region. Explain what's your why.
Always liked to push myself to see what I'm capable of. And being a little bit uncomfortable as I step into a new opportunity is where I want to be. And that's just kind of something that's always guided me. So, like when I took the job at MindBody as an example, it was the biggest company I had ever worked at and the biggest department. It was very intimidating. And I felt very nervous about it, and it went really well. Right. And so after MindBody, I was approached by Michael Loeb. Michael Loeb is one of the founders of Priceline, but he's had many unicorn exits, like five or six, maybe seven. I'm losing track of all of his unicorns. Incredibly successful, inspirational person who is just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I was really, really, flattered to have someone like that reach out and say, "Hey, I've looked at your background and what you've done, and I have an idea for a company and I want you to run it." I just couldn't turn down the opportunity. So, yeah, I mean, I get inspired when people are betting on me in that way. And I think at MindBody, working with these entrepreneurs, I created a users conference called the Bold Conference. It's interesting that you use that word bold because that's my word. I love that word. And we created a whole conference around it, grew it to 2,000 attendees, and it was for these entrepreneurs, these fitness studio owners, yoga studio owners, salon owners. I was so inspired by them. I was like, man, they were mostly women, like 70%. I thought, gosh, I wonder if I could ever do that. I wonder if I could like build a company and run it. And it's something I've always wanted to do. So that's my why.
That's a
Yeah.
great story, and wow, pretty remarkable to get found, so to speak, right?
Hmm.
But to take that risk to do it, right? To go after it, and you've had success, which is so. Congratulations to you on what you've been able
Thanks.
to do.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we're gonna get to our last few questions, kind of like shotgun style here, as we wrap up here. So now, how do
Okay.
you measure success in your business today?
So we have, just like with all of our clients, we have revenue targets and, margin and EBITDA numbers that we're trying to achieve. I really took on a hard job because my job is not only to hit our numbers as a business, but we have to help. At any given time, we've got 15, sometimes up to 20 clients hit their numbers. So it's a tall order, but really we're successful if they are. If they succeed, they're going to stay with us. They're going to keep working with us. They're going to refer us and they're going to help us grow. So it's a very symbiotic relationship, and we're highly incentivized to help our clients win for that reason.
That's awesome. Very good.
Yeah.
So you obviously are a high achiever based on what you've described, and we don't have too many slackers that come onto the show. What type of habits do you do to help perform your best on a consistent basis?
Great question. I think, well, for me, like exercise is really important. Just to keep those endorphins high, to keep my energy high, to keep my mood up through the ups and downs. It's a roller coaster when you're running a business. And so I think having activities outside of work that keep me kind of emotionally and psychologically and spiritually well is really important. Yeah, so I exercise. I'm a musician. I play guitar, sing. My daughter sings, and we sing together. And that hanging out with my family. I'm just outside Austin, and I love music, so a lot of live music in my life. And all of that, I think, is just really important. From a work perspective, my habit is focus. So I have focused time. I block out time in my calendar to focus on whether it's, putting a plan together, putting a proposal together. And I think I've gotten pretty good at figuring out what activities I should spend my time on that are going to move the needle the most. So not me, I can't look at every single piece of creative that's going through the agency. I can't micromanage people. I don't have time to do any of that. I have to hire people that I trust. So I will spend more time focused on hiring and retaining the best people than I will looking at every ad. Those kinds of decisions, I think when you're a founder are really important too.
Yeah. Yeah. And scaling. I mean, what you said there, because trust, just like people trust to buy your things and to be a great CEO, you have to ultimately trust people can do the work that you used to do in the past, right? And other people used to do in the past. And so
That's right.
that's, really, really well said there. Let's see here. One more. So how do you measure success now in your personal life?
I think just the well, as a mom, like I have kids that are now in entering adolescence, and so their well-being, their happiness, the quality time we spend together, how they're doing in school, like all of those things are like my priorities. I have a friend who sadly passed away at 43, and before he died, he said, life is all about relationships. And he was really successful. He's a very successful guy. But as a founder, yes, I'm a very, very high achiever. And it's easy for me to just work, work, work. And, I can easily work all day, all night, all weekend. But to really take a step back and remember that's not what life is about. Ultimately, time is my most precious asset and gift. And that's what I cannot waste, especially with my kids. And of course, the clock's ticking. I'm like, they're going to be, out of school soon. They're in their teens now. So just the quality time I spend with them is the most important thing to me.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah. As a father of four, it is. It's a big part of your life. And something I actually learned in the previous podcast we recorded that, you're as a mom, she says, your mom sense of joy is the happiness of your least happy kid.
Yeah.
It was kind of, it was a really kind of interesting way of looking at it. Ooh, that's probably true. It's seeing how my wife is with with our kids. So, all right. What is one final question? How can people connect and learn more
hmm
about you and your firm and what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. So my email address is amanda@rocketfuellabs.com. So feel free to just drop me an email. Of course, our website is rocketfuellabs.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I think Amanda W. Patterson is my LinkedIn handle. So those are the best ways to reach me.
Amanda, this has been absolutely fantastic. Congratulations to everything you've done. And I encourage people to go out, reach out to Amanda and her team at Rocket Fuel Labs. They seem like they're doing absolutely extraordinary work. So thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Carl. It was
To
great to
everyone
meet
else who's
you.
listening, excuse me. Yes, thank you. And to everyone else who's listening, we hope you enjoyed this. As we always like to say, first of all, thank you. I encourage you to share and like these guests. This is why we continue to get so much input and people to come on to the show. And we always like to say to cap off, wishing you the very best and measuring your success. Have a great day.